welcome to see her.
What are we learning today?
What are we learning today, Taylor? Now that you're overwhelmed with joy?
For 7 astronauts.
Know anything about
Can you name them?
Yeah, on my ID sheet.
Well, we're starting. Can you name them?
No, I can't.
Can you name any one of them? Any one astronaut? First 7. What?
Any one astronaut?
Just one of the first 7.
John Glenn.
That away. Any others?
Well, of course, Neil Armstrong, but...
Well, he was in the but he wasn't Mercury. He was Apollo.
No.
Do you know anything about Shepard's prayer? You know anything about Shepard's prayer?
No.
Okay, probably good.
Well, you were at Minico. You know roughly what I was dealing with. Is it a surprise that I don't know this stuff?
No, it wasn't, because I didn't teach him. I actually, see, I taught where he went to high school.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, isn't it?
You guys have ever heard the story of how we met Mr. Dillard?
Yeah, go ahead, tell
I'll
him.
go back to the
Okay. So, when we first moved here, well, I moved here the first year by myself, and family came over to visit, and my wife is in the drive-thru at Arby's one day getting lunch, and our license plates in Idaho, the first 2, it's a number and a letter, indicates what county you're from. So she's ordering food, and some strange guy comes pounding on her window in the drive-thru.
Oh, God.
Are you from Minidoka County? And she's like, who the heck is this guy?
Yeah, true.
She's like, yeah, actually, I am. She's like, well, I taught at Minico years and years ago. So that was our first.
Well, not only did I teach at Minico, but his mother was the district clerk, am I right?
Yeah, she did
Yeah,
payroll.
district clerk that I worked with, and his father refereed Big Sky Conference basketball games that my son played in at Montana State. I knew the Nielsen's forever. It was crazy. And there she was. And tell her, Taylor, what I gave you as a gift one time.
Oh, you're all better.
Old Minico Letterman's jacket. Maybe you have to wear it on throwback day. Yeah. So small. It's a small world, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
We're glad to have you back and glad to have her still.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I won't interrupt any longer.
Hey,
Carry
you
on.
did fine. Good to see you.
Bye.
5 minutes? Oh, all right. Is it lunchtime in 5 minutes? Okay.
Okay. You want to finish here or you want to go? Okay. All right. All right. July 21st, 1961, a suborbital flight called Liberty Bell 7, near disaster. This was commanded by Virgil Gus Grissom. And he would become the second American into space, obviously, and he rocketed 1 more mile into space than Shepard. He went 118 miles into space. Now, the problem wasn't getting into space for Grissom. The problem was when they landed in the ocean. And if you know anything about this, these capsules, turn and come down through the heat barrier and land in the ocean. They're picked up by an American destroyer and that type of thing. And it's always a little bit of an issue that they get back safely. Well, when Liberty Bell 7 landed in the ocean, a hatch accidentally opened up and the capsule filled with water and started to sink. And it was just lucky that Grissom was rescued by helicopter after almost drowning in that capsule. And that capsule ended up in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean and actually was raised, maybe 10 years ago is all. I can't remember, I got the article somewhere. But he almost lost his life in the capsule sinking to the bottom and cost him his life. Okay, the third flight occurred on February 20th. Yeah, go ahead.
How far did you go?
118 miles. He went 1 more than Shepard. The third flight occurred on February 20th of 1962. Probably the most famous of the Mercury flights was called Friendship 7. Friendship 7. And this would be commanded by John Glenn Jr. Friendship 7. And he became the first American to do what? Orbit the Earth. So this was not a suborbital flight. So February 20th, 1962, Friendship 7 was commanded by John Glenn Jr. And he becomes the first American to orbit the Earth. And he actually circled the Earth 3 times in just a little less than 5 hours. So he circled the Earth 3 times in a little less than 5 hours. Now, the significance of Friendship 7, it was after Glenn's flight that we really believed that we were winning the race for space rather than the Russians. We had accomplished an even deal, right? Okay, and we were winning the race for space. I'll tell you a story about these guys a little bit later. Okay, the next Mercury flight was May 24th of 1962, and it was called Aurora 7. Aurora 7. May 24th, 1962. Now, the man that will command Aurora 7 will be Scott Carpenter. And he obviously is going to be the second American to orbit the Earth. And he circled the globe the same number of times as Glenn, but he did a couple things for the first time that astronauts had not done before. He was the first to take photographs of the Earth from space. So that's one thing he did. In his 3 orbits, same as Glenn, he also photographed the Earth from space. And he actually was the first American astronaut to eat solid food in space as well during his flight. He was the first American astronaut to eat solid food in space. Now, he had a little bit of trouble too on his recovery. His spacecraft landed about 200 miles off target from where it was supposed to land. And it was over an hour after he landed before he was found, which was risky because usually that aircraft carrier and that helicopter are right there. And if anything happens, well, you know what happened to Liberty Bell. If they're not there on site, that guy drowns, Grissom drowns. Well, they lose contact with Aurora 7 for almost an hour, and finally they find him. If he'd had any issues, he would have had trouble. Yep. Oh, Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy, Florida. Pretty much. Yep. Now, moving on to the next flight, which was October 3rd of 1962. It was called Sigma 7. And this was commanded by Walter Sharara Jr. So he will become the 3rd American to orbit the Earth, and he doubles the other 2 by going 6 times around the globe. So, October 3rd of 1962, Sigma 7, commanded by Walter Sharara Jr. He'll become the 3rd American to orbit the Earth, and he circled the globe 6 times. I'm going to come back and tell you a little bit about these guys after this too. And the final flight happened over a 2-day period of time. It was May 15th and 16th of 1963. May 15th and 16th, and it was called Faith 7. What's that? Really? Which one? There you go. Well, this mission, Faith 7, was commanded by Gordon Cooper Jr. And the reason why it took 2 days is he orbited the Earth 22 times. And it would be the last solo flight in space history. From this point on, they would send at least 2 people on a space flight. 22 times. So, Faith 7, May 15th and 16th, 1963, commanded by Gordon Cooper Jr. He orbits the Earth 22 times. Now, this is kind of interesting because he logged more time on this one flight than all the others combined. He was in space 34 hours, 19 minutes, and 49 seconds. So Cooper is going to log more time on this one flight than all the other Mercury flights combined. He was airborne 34 hours, 19 minutes, and 49 seconds. And he got up to speeds over 17,000 miles per hour. So he logged more time on this flight than all the other Mercury flights combined. 34 hours, 19 minutes, 49 seconds, traveled over 17,000 miles an hour. $99? Yeah, so that's about right. So what do you notice here as we get through these flights? There's only 6. Well, there's one astronaut that didn't get an opportunity. He never flew a Mercury flight because he had an erratic heartbeat, and they didn't want to send him into space, and that was Donald Deke Slayton. Donald Deke Slayton, yeah.
Why would they pick, why couldn't they go all
This was something that they had established prior to that. Now, you never know what's going to happen. You know about the ill-fated Apollo 13? You've heard about the Apollo 13 story, maybe you have or not. Their main astronaut got flu symptoms just before and they weren't going to set him up. So they didn't catch this erratic heartbeat during the original training, but caught it during these missions. So let's go back now and end the day by telling you a little bit about these guys and whatever became of them. And we'll start at the beginning with Alan Shepard Jr. We're good. That's a great story.
This is still the same subject.
Yeah, we're just telling you about, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about these guys, what happened to them.
You want to write this down?
Yeah, oh yeah. So we're going to talk about Alan Shepard first. What happened to Alan Shepard after his flight? Well, he was actually grounded from 1963 to 1969. And the reason he was grounded is because he had an ear disorder. And you certainly can't fly in space if your equilibrium and those type of things aren't correct. So Shepard was actually grounded as an astronaut from 1963 to 1969 because of an ear disorder. Well, he made a comeback, and in 1972, he commanded Apollo 14, which was the third successful moon landing. So Shepard was grounded from 1963 to 1969 because of an ear disorder, but in 1972, he commanded Apollo 14, which was the man's third successful moon landing. 1972. Now it's kind of interesting, you don't have to write this down, but it's kind of interesting. When he was on the moon, and you'll see this in the Air and Space Museum, while he was on the moon in 1972, he took a 6-iron and he hit 2 golf balls on the moon. And according to Shepard, he drove them miles and miles. Because when he hit them, they just, no gravity, just went. And you'll see a 6-iron in the National Space Museum when you go to D.C. You don't have to really write this down, I'll just tell you this part. He resigned from the Navy in 1974 at the rank of Rear Admiral, which is a high position, and he died of leukemia at the age of 74. And his wife of 53 years died 5 weeks later. They were both cremated, and their ashes were committed to the sea. That's what happened to Alan Shepard. Poor Virgil Gus Grissom had the tough luck of nearly drowning in Liberty Bell 7. And he also was involved in the Gemini project. As I told you, it went Mercury, Gemini, Apollo. And he flew in the Gemini project as well, and we'll talk more about him. But he died on January 27th, 1967, during the Apollo 1 mission. And what happened, you can write down what you want. He was killed in Apollo 1 when the fire swept through the command module during a test on the launch pad at Cape Kennedy. So he lost his life at an early age. And he is buried in Arlington, and we will visit his gravesite. Okay, what happened to John Glenn Jr.? This is an interesting story. I'll update these notes. Glenn never flew again as an astronaut in the Mercury, Gemini, or Apollo missions, and he resigned in 1964. Anybody want to guess why he never flew again in either the Mercury, Gemini, or Apollo? He got married. He was already married. Good guess. But you're getting kind of close.
Grandkids.
What's that? No, he's going to be elected to Senate in 1974. He got grounded too.
Not too old.
What?
Too old.
You got too old? Too old? No. Who grounded him? No.
His mom.
Hey, who grounded him? Did not let him fly again after that historic flight.
His friends.
Nope.
His wife's son.
Which part of the government? The President of the United States. Very good. John Kennedy grounded him because he did not want America's hero killed in space. This was a dangerous operation. And when he flew Friendship 7 and got American morale to think that we were winning the race for space, he was grounded by Kennedy because they did not want this new American hero killed in space. Now, I will talk about him later, because he will come back and fly again in his 70s on the space shuttle. But what he did is he resigned in 1964, and then he won election to the United States Senate in 1974, representing the state of Ohio, and he served as Senator of Ohio until 1998. Very, very successful senator.
Oh, was he a good senator, or was
Yeah,
he
he was
just
very
voted in
good.
because
No.
everybody liked him?
No, he's very good, yeah. You know, that's a good, Hannah says that he resent Kennedy's decision. Not really. They knew this was a risky business. He saw it maybe as Kennedy giving him a break. You know what I mean? But I'll tell you a story about it. If you look at that picture, second from the top, that says to Randy John Glenn. I'll tell you how I got that picture. When he was senator from Ohio many years ago, before he resigned, I wrote him a letter and asked him, because in those days he didn't have all this email and stuff. Wrote him a letter and asked him if there was any way that he would meet with my kids while we were in Washington, D.C., because we had studied him. And he's political like everybody else, and I understood this, that they have so much pressure to take care of their constituency, the people from Ohio, that he just couldn't book any time for Montana kids to come into his office. And you know, whatever, but that's the way it works. But he felt really bad. And he sent me a letter back, and he said, well, first of all, one of his staffers called and said, Senator Glenn is very sorry he can't meet with you. He'd like to make it up to you. What could he do for you? And I said, hey, would he send me an autographed picture? And they said, sure he would. Would you want one from the Senate or from the Mercury space flights? And I said, I'll take one from the Mercury space flights. And so then I received a nice letter from him in that picture right there that's up on the wall. That's a prized possession. And it especially means more now, obviously. But I was talking with Bailey. She was in the guidance office after the announcement of John Glenn's death, and I was getting on eBay, and you couldn't believe all the new listings on eBay and how their prices had just gone crazy on John Glenn signed things, because as soon as someone cannot sign anymore, price goes up. So anyway, I'll show you a purchase I should receive today. I'll show you tomorrow about John Glenn as I continued on after you left. Okay, let's talk about Scott Carpenter. What happened to Scott Carpenter? He's the guy that landed 200 miles off target. Well, in 1965, he actually took what was called a leave of absence from the Mercury project because he wanted to try to be an aquanaut in the Navy's new Man in the Sea program. Aquanauts were kind of the people that explored below the sea, and he wanted to try that out. So in 1965, he decided to take a leave of absence from the Mercury project, and he became an aquanaut in the Navy's Man in the Sea program. Well, he was very successful, so he actually resigned from NASA in 1967. You write down what you want on this. Because he wanted to do deep sea research for the Navy. He wanted to get into this aquanaut deal. Well, he injured his legs in 1969, which resulted in his retirement, and he finally died of a stroke in 2013 at the age of 88. So he lived a very long, productive life, that being Scott Carpenter, who left NASA to become an aquanaut, and then had to retire because of leg injuries, and then lived a pretty productive life till his death at the age of 88. Walter Sharara Jr., what happened to him? This is the ActiFed story. Anybody know what that is, by the way?
What?
ActiFed?
No.
It's a 60s thing, but you'll get it. Okay, the thing about Walter Sharara Jr. that was impressive is before the Mercury project, he flew 90 successful combat missions during the Korean War. Now, if you can fly 90 combat missions in a war and survive, you're a good pilot and you're fortunate. So he had actually flown 90 successful combat missions in the Korean War prior to being selected. He also took part in both the Gemini and Apollo space programs, lifelong astronaut, and he flew in Apollo 7. He flew in Apollo 7, and he caught what was perhaps the most famous cold in NASA history. So on Apollo 7, they didn't catch it before he left. When he was on Apollo 7 in flight, he caught what historians might label the most famous and profitable cold in NASA history. So when he was in space and he had this cold, he took an over-the-counter drug called ActiFed, to relieve his systems. And of course, this was all public, broadcast, etc. People knew about it, the media did, that he was sick in space, had a very famous cold. He took this Actifed, an over-the-counter medicine, to relieve his symptoms. And guess what happened when he got back? He became the leading spokesman for Actifed and made lots of money. Did very well. So he had the most famous cold in NASA history. He took Actifed to relieve his symptoms in space. And when he got back, he became the leading spokesman for the drug and appeared in many, many commercials about this project and made good money. Well, he retired from the Navy in 1969, and he passed away in 2007 of a heart attack, and his ashes also were committed to the sea. So Walter Sharara Jr. passed away, retired in 1969, passed away in 2007 of a heart attack, and his ashes were committed to the sea. How about Gordon Cooper? Remember, he logged the 2-day trip, 34 hours. Well, he flew in the Gemini program as well. He flew in Gemini 5. And he was overlooked to command another mission and had a falling out with NASA. So he retired and entered private business, did very well in private business, died at the age of 77. And he was cremated, and part of his ashes were sent into orbit around the Earth by another Apollo mission. And quickly, Deke Slayton, so he can finish and be done. He was the flight director of Apollo 13. Had a huge role in getting that aircraft back safely. He retired. He went into business. He founded a company, developed rockets.